Hey, Mrs. Souza, we are live streaming and ready to go.
Okay, stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah. All yours, Lord.
Okay, Mrs. Salzer.
Here.
Mrs. Egan?
Here. Here.
Thank you. Ms. Davenport? Mr. Hillman, absent. Mrs. Callan?
You there?
There she is, as she indicated, she is present.
Here.
Mrs. Mabel? And Mrs. Petropoulos is absent, I'm sorry, as well as Mr. Hillman. Thank you.
Just wanted to introduce a few guests that we have. We have Corey Boaz from Studio GC. We have all of our administrative team here as well. And then it looks like we have Allison Mallow here at Ridge Central and assuming representing CREA, as well as Sam and Gino. So thank you guys for being here. You want to go ahead with the consent agenda, Mrs. Sullivan?
Approval of the consent agenda, minutes of February 2nd, special. Minutes of the February 2nd, 2021 special meeting open. Same date, closed session, minutes of the February 9th meeting, open session, minutes of the closed session on February 9th, minutes of February 23rd, open and closed session. So we need a motion. Motion, please. Second. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, Mrs. Egan on the second. Thank you. Mrs. Callan? She indicated, I believe, aye.
Aye, yeah.
Mrs. Egan?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, she also. Ms. Davenport?
Aye.
Mr. Hillman absent. Mrs. Petropoulos absent. Mrs. Lammel?
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer?
Aye. Okay. 3.0, am I right? Superintendent's report. Yeah, I will.
All right, good. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have quite a few items on here, but I wanted to start with our PTA report. This week, the PTA sent out a talent show, a virtual talent show that was done by students all the way from our youngest students up through junior high, and it was a really enjoyable experience. I know for a lot of kids, it's kids we haven't seen do some of these things before, and we think maybe the comfort of being at home and being able to record that allowed them to kind of step out of their comfort zone. So I was really happy to see how many students we had participated. It was about an hour and 15 minutes. It wasn't judged, anything like that. It was just a way for kids to show off some of the things that they have been doing with their time. Also wanted to let you know that their next food raiser is Wednesday, March 24th, and that will be at Culver's. So that is always a good place to grab a burger and some fries. So that is on March 24th. Next up, we have our school and department reports. And included in your packet are reports of each school. And I just wanted to point out, I've seen some really nice things at the building, specifically some of our older kids at each building, 5th grade, some of our older kids in the junior high, really wanting to take on a leadership role towards the end of their time in those buildings. And that's one of the things that we talk about as an admin team all the time, that yes, as adults, we have to plan things for the students, but we also have to give them the tools to be leaders and to really start advocating for themselves. And we've seen that. I know like at Ridge Central, they came to the administration and wanted to start doing some announcements and just doing different things that they have missed themselves or that they think are really important. And it's always very meaningful when it's the students who take that advocacy to the administration. So I'm really proud of those students, and hopefully we'll continue to see that happening. Under 3.3 enrollment report, enrollment for February was 1,441 students. We are up 13 students from last month, but we are down 34 from last year. Talking with other superintendents in South Cook, people are seeing lower numbers. Some districts around the same size of us have seen a decline of 300 to 400 students in the last year. And more typically, you're seeing about 100. So the fact that we're down 34 is actually atypical for what we're seeing in the area. We're seeing a lot more people either unfortunately not being accounted for or that have moved away due to other reasons. So again, we're down 34, but that number is pretty stable for the area right now. Under our vacant positions and possible staffing needs, included in your packet is the list. We're still looking for an FMLA leave, and we're always looking for some sub-custodians if we can add to our pool. That's something we always want to make sure that we are doing. On 3.5, included in your packet is a proposal to meet our ongoing speech needs. Districts all over have seen increasing speech needs, and this is not a long-term speech need necessarily that we're seeing, but due to some constraints on scheduling, and really many times when speech pathologists pull kids, they're pulling in larger groups. That has kind of been minimized this year with making sure that things are social distance and some students being remote while other people are in person. And so trying to make sure that we get all of those referrals done and to make sure we're meeting those needs. We are looking later in the meeting today to approve contracting out for a 0.6 position for the remainder of the year. We don't think we need a full-time. We have used the co-op in many cases, but their schedules are now completely full from what they're able to continue to offer us. So we are going to be looking to add that 0.6 FTE later in the meeting. So I'm going to go into our hybrid learning model and COVID numbers update. I'm going to share my screen and just, we've kind of gone through this before, but just so that the board knows, I'm not able to see everyone on there. So if I can go through my presentation, and then I'd be happy to answer every single question at the end. I know Gino is still working furiously to try to fix the sound issues. It seems like the sound issues are fine when we're here in the room, but when we try to open up the speaker for any outside. So we are still working on that. And hopefully by the time I'm done with my presentation that we'll have that sound issue fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and share that screen. All right, as usual, I'm going to start with our same exact slides, our charts that we have seen since probably back in September. And this is our 7-day positivity rate in Chicago Ridge with the 8% bar there at the top. You will see we are below 2% and have been for a couple weeks now. And Chicago Ridge has done a really nice job getting that positivity rate down. You'll see back in January, we were still below the 8% mark, but 7% was about where we were at, and we're well below 2%. And I think that follows really the state trend that we're seeing, but we are definitely on that lower end. When you see all of the districts that touch District 127 and a half boundaries, you see a wide spectrum all the way back in January, but you also see that trend downward. We only see one district that's really seeing a trend that you don't want to see, but everyone else is way down. And Chicago Ridge, you see, is the lowest of all of them, which is just absolutely great to see. And when we look at our COVID-19 dashboard, it really spells that out because this looks specifically at what we're seeing in schools. And usually I update it so that it's accurate for today in the moment. but there hasn't been any updates since the infogram went out on Friday. So I just kind of left it. And confirmed positive students, we did have one student last week who was a confirmed positive. We do not have any confirmed positive staff, and I am very happy to report that we have approximately 81% of our staff members who have been vaccinated at this point. I know the CDC has said that after 2 weeks, that is when they are considered fully vaccinated. So we are just waiting those 2 weeks, and we figure about a week and a half from now that we'll have 81% of our staff fully vaccinated, which is great to hear. Students quarantined. Right now we have 4 students quarantined, one of those being the positive case. The other 3 were contacts out of school. And we currently have 2 staff members who are quarantined due to being close contacts out of school. So those numbers really, since we've come back from winter break, have been very, very low. And that's obviously what we want to make sure that we see. So what do our current learning models look like right now in terms of which students are where? We have 55% of the students in the district are currently in person, which is the highest number we have been all year, 45% remote. And you can see the breakdown between Findlay, Central, and Lawn. And I've been really happy to see kind of Findlay creep up. We've had some people go remote, but we've had other people who have come back in person. And that's something that junior high and high school people have been kind of battling, just because for those older kids, sometimes it's just easier to be at home. And so our administration, our teachers have done a great job of reaching out to those families of those kids, especially who might be struggling, and to try to encourage them to come in. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to really review and discuss the survey response data, both from the parents and from the staff, to review the options that have been considered for the remainder of the school year, to go over the impact of any of these changes, and to present the administration's recommendation of what we do for the remainder of the year. So I do think there are some important points that we need to acknowledge. And I think one of them is the differences we have seen in all schools since our last full day of in-person instruction on March 13th. I'm sure the board remembers we had our March board meeting. I look back, we mentioned the word COVID a little bit. That Saturday, we had an in-person board meeting where Studio GC came out and talked with us. And it was kind of one of those, should we have the meeting? We don't really know. We had the meeting. And then the remainder of that year, there was no more in-person instruction. And then almost every school in the state started remote this year. And then eventually in October, we were able to move to having kids in person. But it's almost been a year, and to think of the changes that people have gone through in their homes, people have gone through at where they're working, it's really been big. I also want to acknowledge that there are many different opinions regarding every issue that we're going to go through tonight. There's people who definitely want kids in school full-time, no masks, and to get back to normal immediately. There's other people who are planning on staying remote for the rest of the year and who don't want to see any changes at all. And then there's plenty of people who are right in the middle. And so I think that's important that we recognize that there are differing opinions throughout this entire issue. As I've stated throughout this process, back in June, when we received the first guidance from IDPH and from ISB, there is no perfect model. No school has a perfect model. If they did, we'd all follow it. But districts have to do what they can under the current guidelines from IDPH and CDC. It's very, very interesting that today at 11:30, those two groups, or IDPH and ISB, released updated guidance. And so that updated guidance is that the distance needs to be 3 to 6 feet. One of the biggest changes that has happened is you are no longer constrained to a total of 50 people in one place, that it's based now on social distance in that place. And that's huge in the gym. I think of the high schools who have some of these massive gymnasiums that you could only have 50 people in. So that's been a big change. And other than that, a lot of it stayed very, very similar to what we have. It just kind of put it in writing and made it more black and white than what we had before. As of March 1st, it's also important to acknowledge that around 40% of the districts in South Cook County, which is made up of over 66 districts, they had not had students in person for 1 day yet during the 2021 school year. And again, each district has different circumstances in terms of facility space and the number of students opting for in-person or remote learning. There are some districts where only 20% of students have said they're coming in. There's other districts where 93% of students have opted to come in. So those are all different things that people have to consider. These differences in the guidelines that IDPH and the CDC have laid out are the main reason there are so many different models out there, because we have to follow it, and you can't just change what your buildings look like. You can't change the number of students who want to come in or who want to stay at home. So that's why there are so many different models. And I also want to acknowledge, hearing that 40% of the districts in the area have not been in person one day, that we have been able to consistently provide for in-person learning for the last 5 months. Outside of the right after winter break for the week and a half, which was recommended by almost all different health agencies, we have not had to close down throughout that time. And I think that's something we should be proud of. So what have our priorities been during this school year? Number one, it's been the health and safety of students and staff. We've wanted to make sure since October that we provided in-person instruction daily. We talked back then about the importance of that social emotional piece of students being able to come in every day instead of having a model where they're only in the buildings maybe 2 or 3 days a week. We wanted to make sure that they were in person. We wanted to continue to offer a strong full remote option. Even now, we have 45% of our students in remote learning. If we would have offered a subpar experience, that's 45% of our students who would not have been getting what they should have. So that's been a big priority for us as well. And then the other one has been minimizing disruptions. We've really tried, knowing how many disruptions people have been through since March 13th, where we could control it, we wanted to go ahead and minimize those disruptions. So what are some of the positives that we have from our current AM and PM model? We all know that, as I said, it's not perfect, but there are some positives. And that is that students have received that live instruction every day. We've had very small class sizes overall, and that allows for a lot more one-to-one time with the students. So even though the time that they're there is not what we're used to, the amount of individual attention has really, really increased. It's been consistent since the middle of October. Interaction between students and teachers every single day, not just every other day. And because we've been able to keep the 6 feet distance between the students, that has kept our quarantine numbers low. I think it was a month or two ago I shared that another district, which is the same size as us, had 388 students quarantined at one time. And that's huge. We have never come, I think the most we had was like 46 in the entire district. So that's a big difference. There's also the benefits of adding instructional time. So we talked about the benefits of our current model, but there's also benefits if we were to add extra time. And number one, there's just more in-person instruction. And I think we can all agree that in-person instruction benefits a lot of kids. Also the increased opportunities for socialization. We talk about the social emotional well-being, and there's a balancing between changing things up on people and having more time to socialize. So those are different things you have to weigh. And I think we all know less screen time for students. I know for my 3 kids at home, they have spent way more screen time than I ever said they would, but we also have to survive as parents. So knowing that they would be in person longer does make for less screen time for the students. So we did send out a survey for our parents, and it did really ask, what were your choices? What would you want to see in person, remote, 4-hour day were the choices that we gave them. And of the over 1,400 students, 830 of them were represented in response. So 56% of them were returned. Obviously, we'd always want 100, but at least it kind of gave us some guidance as to what people were thinking. And for those parent survey results, of those people who were in person, 3/4, 75% of those favored a 4-hour day as their number one choice, followed by a 25% who wanted to stay in the AM/PM model. 10% of people who were remote indicated that they would come in person, while 4% indicated they would move to remote learning. Now, we did not have any open-ended questions on here, but I can say that a lot of the feedback that our administrators have received and some of the calls that I have gotten, for those 4% who indicated they would move to remote learning, they were worried about less distance and felt that it would not be as safe, so they would move into the remote option. What I heard from a lot of people of the 75% who wanted to favor a 4-hour day is that they really favored that if they were able to stay in the same classroom, but that they did not feel as comfortable if they had to change their teacher. We also asked teachers what was their highest priority, and over 70% of them said it was keeping the instructional model consistent. They've seen the benefits that that has for our students and not changing that up for the remainder of the year. We had almost 12% said increasing the amount of on-site instruction for their students was the biggest and highest priority. And then we had about 18% said that maintaining the same teacher was very important for their students. Then we asked another question for our teachers. Do you have any interest in your students attending for more time than the current model allows? If it means that students may have a different teacher than they currently do for some or all of their school day. And overwhelmingly, knowing that they may have to change their students, they were not interested in that. They have built these relationships at least since October, if not earlier, and that was very important to them. So what model did we look at? As an administrative team, we've spent the last couple weeks since the last board meeting and even before that, looking at a 4-hour day that would go from 8:10 to 12:10. They would have their instructional time for those 4 hours. And then from 12:10 to 1:30, they would be transported home, whether it was from parents driving them, from the bus. They would eat their lunch and they would have a break. Then from 1:30 to 2:30, the elementary students would have their science and social studies. That would be synchronous learning with the teacher. Well, the junior high would meet in small groups with their teachers and also have asynchronous work time. Encore classes would take place during the in-person time. We would look at the elementary level of having 2 PEs, 1 art and 1 music per week. Student class sizes would have to increase and a minimum of 3 feet of social distancing would be kept. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we did have those new guidelines come out today. We had heard kind of through the grapevine that that's what was going to be put out for us. So when we were planning this, it was with that 3 to 6 foot guidance, and that's exactly what ended up coming out. The remote learning schedule would need to change to the same times to accommodate the adjustments made in the teacher schedules. So it would not only change the schedules of those in person, it would also change the remote schedule so that the schedules lined up so we had flexibility with the teachers. Remote special education and remote EL students would live stream from home, and they would get their instruction at the same time as those students in the class. So what would that additional time look like? I think we need to be realistic in saying that that's an additional 90 minutes out of the day, but 35 minutes of that would be in their special, so in PE, art, music at the elementary level. And having kids here a little bit longer with the masks on for 4 hours, we would envision needing a 15-minute break. And so that leaves about approximately 40 minutes of extra instructional time that would take place. And I know obviously math would be a big focus of that. We'd also look at literacy, writing, things like that. But that's 40 minutes out of a 90 minutes is what you'd actually get extra in the classroom. At the junior high, all classes would be in person, including encore. So they'd go through their schedule. We would still look to have science and or social studies block. So they would be doing that every other day. And that would increase each class period by about 5 minutes. So as we were going through this, we did realize that there were definitely some drawbacks. And when we got some of the survey results, it wasn't a huge change in what those drawbacks were, but there were still, even when you add a few kids here and there in certain classrooms, it did make some big adjustments. And I think we need to remember that we had 56% of the students reported on this survey, and therefore these numbers are minimum drawbacks that we would see. There could possibly be even greater numbers. And so the biggest drawback in this is that a minimum of 33%, or 1 out of every 3 of our elementary students, would need to change teachers for the remainder of the year. In some grade levels, that number would rise to 50% of the students or more needing to change their teacher for the end of the year. The average elementary class would move from 15 students to between 30 and 35 students. And the reason behind that is, let's use Rich Central as an example. In 3rd grade, we had more kids who came back and we couldn't fit them in one classroom. They currently have 2 remote teachers at that grade level, and we would need to pull one of them back to an in-person class. You would then need to combine those 2 remote classes who was left over. And that's why we estimate that they would be between 30 and 35 kids. And anyone who has watched a remote class or participated in one, obviously the smaller the class, the more attention those kids can get. There's also the strong potential for more quarantines due to students being closer together. One of the reasons we haven't had a quarantine very often is in almost every class, we've been able to stay 6 feet and social distance. Now, there are some of our younger classrooms where we have the space, but just because of the kids' needs, we haven't been able to social distance and we've had to do some quarantining. But when you're down to 3 feet, even in the new recommendations that came out today, the CDC still says that if it's under 6 and you were there for a combined 15 minutes or more, you still need to quarantine. We would also see the need that some classrooms would need to be moved, and we would try to avoid the gyms because we obviously want to have PE. But in the lunchrooms, the libraries, the STEM labs, and any other areas with large additional space to accommodate more students. I know in one building, we'd have to move potentially 2 of the kindergarten classrooms out of there into a lunchroom. And so that's a disruption as well. At the junior high, 57% of the students would see their schedules changed, with 15% of those seeing every single class on their schedule changed. At least 42% of the students would see their encore class changed and a repeat from what they took earlier this year. And that really has to do with how we had to schedule things at the start and make adjustments in October. So kids, we'd see a lot of kids who would have to go back and repeat that same encore class. And in the junior high, there would be some remote classes that would be as high as 40 students in those classes. So looking at all those drawbacks and understanding all the changes that would occur to the students, teachers, and their schedule, the recommendation at this time is to remain in the AM and PM model. And when we really looked at these schedules, we did see with our full custodial staff and full temporary cleaning staff, we do feel we can add 10 minutes to each session. And I know that's not a lot, but that adds up. When we look at 10 minutes every day and a 5-day week, that's 50 minutes of extra instructional time. So we would want to add 10 minutes to the end of the AM class and 10 minutes to the end of the PM class. So the AM session would be from 8:10 to 10:50 and PM would be 12:20 to 3 o'clock. The pre-K times, those would stay the same based on the schedule and getting all of that stuff in the pre-K rooms cleaned. We would keep that schedule consistent. This recommendation is being made really due to the numerous changes that the students would be required to make once again this year if we combine the AM and PM students. We have many students who've already had to change teachers once this year. We have some at some of the buildings who this could potentially be their 4th teacher this year. And they finally got some consistency and we want to be able to see that consistency throughout. And we feel that that's very important for them socially and emotionally. We do believe that both models are safe for our students. When we looked at it and saw what changes had to be made, and yes, we would have to move some classrooms into bigger areas to make sure that we were at 3 feet. We really do feel that it would be safe. And so it's not fair to say that we're not recommending a change because of safety concerns. It's the drastic changes that would have to take place for the students and to put them through that is why we are recommending we stay in this current model. And we are still required to follow IDPH and CDC guidelines that are in place, which do severely limit our options. If we were able to bring larger class sizes back into the rooms and we didn't have to make all those changes, well, then our recommendation would most likely be different. But we still have to follow these guidelines. And that's why I said at the beginning of the presentation that you really can't compare districts in the area. Some people have much harder things to overcome than we do. Other places have extra classrooms, extra spaces everywhere to put kids. We don't have that currently. And so that's why, although I'm sure we hear all these other districts that some are opening more, others aren't even close to being open as much as we have, you really can't compare all of these districts together. So our next steps, as I said back in January, when we asked for a commitment from families when we came back from winter break, that commitment was going to be through spring break. And this Friday, we'll be sending out another commitment form for those interested in making a change from remote to in-person or vice versa. And that would be for the remainder of the school year. And that would take place on Wednesday, April 7th, when we return from spring break. The additional 10 minutes for each session would begin before spring break. We would look at that taking place Monday, March 22nd. So that gives us a week to kind of get out any kinks with bus schedules, anything like that before spring break, and then really hit the ground running April 7th. And I know Mrs. Bazian, who works with the buses, has already been in contact to make sure we can get the schedules working and not make too many adjustments on that. The district really wants to continue to look for ways to provide after-school activities, especially like at the junior high level, like things that have now been deemed safe to come in and do in person that we can do after school. I know many of our teachers are itching to do some things and have already come to their administrators asking, can we do this after school? Can we do that? And so we want to have the kids up here and doing things, especially as the weather gets nicer. We want to see that happen as much as possible. So I'm going to wrap up the presentation and ask for any questions from the board. If you can just let me stop sharing my screen. And I guess we will find out if our sound issues have been fixed. So any questions from the board? All right, tomorrow morning, I'm just waiting for a letter that I have needs to be translated. This information will be going out to our families. So tomorrow morning, and then I will get the survey out on Friday. Right. Next up, we have 3.7, which is our school calendar for 21-22. At the last board meeting, I presented two options. It was draft A, draft B. It really very similar calendars. One with a start date that has been similar to what we've had on the calendar for the last couple of years. This year, obviously got pushed back quite a bit due to everything going on. And then the other one, which was calendar A, offered a later start date of Thursday, the 26th. I also included in the board packet a draft C, which would start us on Monday, the 30th, with everything else really staying the same. The only difference in the draft that I had provided at the last board meeting with today is in April, a school improvement day was added on there for Wednesday, the 27th. We always take a school improvement day on there. A few things to just mention about all the calendars. First, from the teachers union, really looking this year to have a later start. Definitely was not interested in our normal start date that we have had. I think everyone sees a need to have some time this summer to first step away and then to really continue our work of preparing for next school year. We tried to make sure that we could match up with District 218's winter and spring breaks as much as possible. This would be the second year in a row that Eid is presented as a non-student attendance day, offering the same evening conference opportunities as we had. It will be an interesting conversation moving forward if we still want to offer some type of remote option for our families, assuming we're able to meet in person next year. But we've gotten some really, really good feedback on those remote ones this year. And so all the drafts in your calendar can be found in your packet, including 218's calendar. And I am recommending calendar A for a couple of reasons. It's a later start than we're used to. It doesn't go all the way after Labor Day or as late as draft C proposes. But we also, one of the things that we are hopeful of is that we will be able to have conference activities next year, which even with starting the 26th, we're kind of pushing up against with the rest of the schools in the conference. But I think we'd be able to make that work out. So again, I am recommending draft A for later in the board agenda, but did want to open it up for any comments and suggestions. Mrs. Egan?
If the teachers are wanting later, then why are you recommending A instead of C?
I talked about the ability to be able to participate in the conference events. And when I did talk with the union, yes, they did like the later start, but they said a good compromise could be draft A, but they had absolutely no interest in draft B.
Yeah, I think draft B was off the table last time. I'm surprised to see it at all right now, to be honest. So, I mean, I just don't know. Well, if they want later, and that was what we were trying to do, was buy extra time for the fall, I don't know why we would be looking at A at all and not just going straight for C.
Does anyone else have any comments, suggestions? Again, the only difference on the two calendars is the start and end date. Mr. Hillman?
I mean, does starting, was it 2 days later, really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, and I think we probably wouldn't have an answer to that until we kind of saw how the summer went as far as what is presented to us. We had a lot of things drop very late this past summer in terms of what we were allowed to do, what we were not allowed to do. But I do think if we don't have that same type of summer, that the 26th of August is a very fair open date as opposed to the 30th. But again, I don't think we'll have that answer until we see what the state does later in the summer. Yes, Mr. Hellman.
Well, I don't think we could predict what's going to happen to the summer, but I mean, either draft works. 1 or 2 days, I don't see it making any difference. So I kind of agree with A.
Mrs. Sulzer?
Yeah. Okay, considering the year that our kids have gone through, well, the junior high, just definitely to affect them. Them to have the potential to compete in conference in some of our sports, I don't want them missing out on that. They're gonna have the opportunity to do that, and the couple days makes the difference for that. I think it's important that we get in here before those dates when they start having to compete or start training or whatever. Our kids have missed a lot this year. And I know how important grades are and everything, but so is that, especially after the year they've had cooped up.
Ms. Davenport?
I absolutely agree with everything Greg and Nancy just said.
Mr. Hillman?
When do these conference sports start?
I don't do that very often where I mute myself. Games, our practices usually start that week of potentially the 16th, and games are usually looked at that week of the 23rd. That's at least been what's happened in the past. Now, I do want to be very honest. We are talking a small percentage of people, but I do think if we're the only ones starting that late, that it could cause some problems for that. Are there any other comments?
Wait, Adam, are you saying the other schools are going back the week of the 16th?
There are some that are going back that early. Most of them would be going back early the week of the 23rd.
Okay. Well, I mean, I actually, I like that there's only 2 student attendance days instead of starting out with 5 full days. That's actually a very big positive for A, so that's fine.
Yeah, and I know our teachers have always liked when we've been able to do that, just because you get to kind of meet them and then start another week moving in. So I'm going to move on to our NWEA MAP results, winter of 2020 and winter of 2021. we knew going into this that there would be some rough patches with testing. We did not test in the fall, which I still believe was the right call, and as we were trying to get students in and just getting them to have instructional time. But one of the things that we have now is they weren't tested in the spring, they weren't tested in the fall. So we're looking at a very large window gap from the winter to the winter. So our scores were down, just like scores nationwide overall have been down. And what I am excited about to see later on is when we see a growth in the two periods that are supposed to be measured against each other. So the winter and potentially the spring. Because what makes this difficult is we know we have areas that we have to grow in, but we don't know if that lack of growth occurred from March through September, the beginning of September. And then maybe we possibly made up a lot of that in September through this time, or were we low and continued low throughout that time? So those are some things that we cannot answer right now. If you remember who took this test, our 3rd through 8th grade either took it in person. We tried to encourage, and we did a really nice job getting a lot of people to come take it in person. 3rd through 8th could also take it remote if they wanted. And we talked about some potential issues if parents were helping or they had the chance to look some things up. We try to minimize some of that, but we all know that it can happen. And then with our K2, because of how difficult it is to kind of take this test at times, we said that you either had to come in person or you just weren't going to test this time, which we were okay with. So you saw a wide variety of different scores all over the place. One of the things that I was happy when the administration broke down this week to look at our remote versus our in-person classes. And we saw in many instances where our in-person kids scored higher. We also saw many classes where our remote kids scored higher. And when I talked about offering a robust remote learning option, I think that's very important to see that. And some of the kids, again, took the test remotely, some of them took it in person. But just like nationwide, we saw a larger dip in math. And one of the things that the national quote unquote experts have said is it's because many parents don't feel as comfortable helping their kids at home with the math. Whereas reading and writing and things like under ELA, those scores did not dip as low. And the national experts have predicted that's probably because they've been able to get that help at home from the parents. So this is really important for us, especially when we compare what we see in the winter and what we're going to see in the spring in planning for next year and in planning for the critical standards that we want to make sure that we hit and understanding where we need to accelerate that some of that work and to really push kids to get back to that growth that we're accustomed to seeing here. But I think when we see the scores in the spring, that is going to be so much more meaningful for us to understand the growth or lack thereof in some cases that we see from these results. Mrs. Sulzer?
When do we take them in the fall? We take them 3 times a year, right? And when in the fall?
Yeah, we usually take them in September and then in January, February, and then towards right at the end of the year.
Yeah, it might be important to see what September's come up like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If they're all here, hopefully they'll all be in school.
Yeah, and again, these are very important indicators for us to understand. We know that this data has some gaps, but we also felt we needed to get a spot on the data continuum so that we can start comparing those moving forward. Now, I'll talk about how in 3.8, I feel that the MAP data is going to really help us. I'm going to talk about an assessment that I don't feel is going to be beneficial to us, and that is the Illinois Assessment for Readiness. Illinois did apply for the waiver for us not to have to take those tests. And for people who don't remember what IAR is, it used to be called PARC. And it's 6 different tests that our students will need to take. And Illinois did apply for the waiver. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the federal government said you are going to be taking these tests. And there is no accountability. So we're not getting a summated designation. So we're not going to be told we're excellent or commendable or needs improvement. There's also no penalty if 95% of our kids don't take it. There's usually a penalty associated with that. So none of that is in place. Yes, Mrs. Egan.
So since there are no penalties, what would happen if we as a school district decided we just weren't going to administer it?
That is an exact question we have asked our Regional Office of Education. Out of the 66 superintendents, I think 50 of us wanted the answer to that, and we're waiting to find out. Because I can tell you, I signed my name to a letter that 650 other state superintendents sent and pretty much ignored. And so we are extremely frustrated by this. We look at this as basically taking 6 days away from our kids of learning. So we are going to do whatever flexibility we are given. I would like to take that on. But I have a feeling we'll get some guidance from our state very soon. And the tests usually have to take place in March and part of April. This year, I think they're opened all the way till May 26th, around that time. So they've said they're going to switch around some of the questions and minimize those. So right now, I don't think they really know what they're doing. And so we're kind of in a holding pattern. And again, just really, really frustrated that our kids are going to have to take their time doing these tests. So I'll keep the board and the community updated where we are and what our position is going to be moving forward. But right now, we're just kind of in a holding pattern. Next up is 3.10. It's the SR2 funds. We did officially get awarded our SR2 funds, which came to basically $2.4 million to use to help with the costs related to the pandemic. And these expenditures are really from March of 2020 till September 30th of 2023. So I'm very glad that they did give us some time to make sure that these expenditures get in place, because some things, as the heating unit comes on right now, some things need to be put in place right away. Like if there's HVAC things that we want to look at, but things like bringing up some student learning loss, that isn't just going to end by the end of next year. These are things that I think we all know that are going to go with students, and we need to continue to support them. So I was very glad to see that we're going to have an opportunity to do that over a couple school years. And what we are really looking to do as an administration is we've developed a framework where we looked at kind of our strategic plan areas. So it's things like our facilities and our curriculum, technology, and knowing that we can look at these areas and figure out where can we spend this money appropriately that's going to have the best bang for the students. Again, HVAC is something that get done very quickly. I've had calls with Studio GC over the last 6 weeks, talking with them about that, and there's things that they can put in there with ultraviolet light, and that's great, but again, that doesn't help with student learning. So it's making sure that we balance and prioritize these different areas, and I think by following this framework, it's going to really make sure that we look at all of these different areas and not neglect one. So we've kind of put together a list of these and things that we're going to fit in there. Excuse me. And I know we're looking probably in May to get official approval of a grant, but we have many times that we'll be able to amend that as we see different changes and we get those different scores. So we will be updating the board probably every couple weeks on where we are with that grant and where that money is going. Any questions on the SR2 funds? All right. So 3.11, the offsite furniture storage. We began, if you remember, back at the beginning of the year, we had talks with Our Lady of the Ridge about using some of their empty classrooms for storage space. And we didn't end up needing it at that time. And as we started to kind of look at the different plans right now, we did realize that, all right, we're going to reach out to them again. And even though we're not moving with the 4-hour day, we still have gyms that are very full of furniture, and we want to really open that space up so that we can start using it when it's needed. And we've talked about those after school activities. So we would like, we do have an agreement with Our Lady of the Ridge to rent out 5 classrooms at a monthly rate of $250. We were actually ready to go a little bit sooner, but we would be waiting on the moving company. There is a lot of furniture that would need to be moved. So we do, I believe, March 18th is the first day that we would be looking to do that. Any questions on that? Mrs. Egan?
I thought that looking into moving the things was in case we were going to go to the 4-hour day and needed to be able to use the gyms for actual classes versus, so like, why are we spending the money to move furniture from one place to another? And you stated, I think somewhere it said something that it was just for a couple of months. It wasn't even looking at longer term than this school year. So why are we doing this right now?
Yeah, number one is to try to open up the gym so we can use them for after school activities. And there is the potential that it could
I have no audio.
everyone.
I too cannot hear you.
Yeah, I am out also.
It appears, at least for us, that Adam's frozen, but nobody else is.
Me too.
All right, Adam's not here, so it must have been frozen.
Adam's computer is frozen, so just give us a minute.
Can everyone hear and see me now? Good. So again, I'm not sure if you were able to hear, but again, with Our Lady of the Ridge, they are looking at, if possible, to extend that out. But with the changes that they have occurring, they couldn't agree to anything longer than that. But if they are able to, they are definitely open to extending that out.
I just don't understand why we're even looking at doing it right now, because I know you're saying the possibility of after school sports, but is there, or activities, is there even a plan for that moving forward? Because I mean, we're not seeing anything as parents in terms of a plan. And if we're paying for a moving company and storage, there should be a plan of what's going to happen and make that cost, like having a reason to have to incur a cost. So from what I'm seeing as a parent right now, the one activity that is being offered in terms of like a free throw contest certainly does not merit spending thousands of dollars for a moving company and to rent storage spaces.
Yeah. And at the junior high, there are definitely plans when we come back from spring break to have, I would say, almost every single day that gym being used. We've been kind of waiting for these guidelines to come out today to make sure there wasn't anything in it that would prevent it. We did not assume that there would be, but we wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything before we started sending stuff out.
Used by the junior high classes and students, though, right? We're not talking about community things.
No, it would just be for our own students at this time. So, Ms. Davenport?
I mean, my thoughts are, in order to, it's kind of like, do you put the carriage in front of the horse? We really can't, I think, make logistical plans to have after-school activities until we've accounted for where we're going to put the furniture. I think this is the proper way to do it, to get the contract signed, to get the material out. So that way, if you come back from spring break and the decision is made that these kids can come in and do some activities, we can just hit the floor running. There are a lot of students, even if you get 5 kids in here that are going to do some type of after school activity, it is so worth it, because I think a lot of these kids are dying to get moving, to start doing stuff. I can't imagine being able to come in right after spring break, administration decide we can have some type of activity, and then start the process to get a contract signed, move the furniture. I mean, that stuff takes time. I think it is absolutely worth investing in the money, getting the stuff out, so that the millisecond we come back, if the decision is made that we can open the door to sports, you can have a number of students who I think will gladly participate in that. I can't imagine coming back, then deciding to do the activities, and then signing contracts and hiring movers. I think you absolutely nailed the nail on the head. Is that you hammered? You know what I'm saying? I think this is the way to go. If it is a 40% chance that we can have a sport or some type of activity, I think for these kids, it's mental health and activity and socialization. It's absolutely worth every penny.
I agree with you, Elaine. I don't disagree that it needs to be done ahead of time for it to be even possible. But I would think then if there are planning stages that we as a board certainly should know what those planning stages are. And this is the first we're hearing of any possibility of after school being placed anywhere. So those are plans that we should be notified of. Not specific plans, but I guess we should just know that there are plans being made.
Well, it sounds like we know now.
Well, I'm curious too about busing, because for the other after school activities, buses were provided. So if kids are coming in the AM, then those kids don't have the opportunity unless their parents can bring them back. There's a couple of things that I'm curious is this going to be just sports at the junior high and then it's only kids who can get rides or walk?
And that's a really good
Sports,
question.
because we've already been told that there is no conference sports happening.
The need to kind of look, are we going to provide a bus to and from? Again, waiting for this guidance that came out finally today, but it's conversations that we have had. Mrs. Egan, it looked like you were trying to say something.
Oh, I'm trying to clarify that we've been told there is no conference activity. So there is no sports as we knew it. So for everybody keeps saying there, to have the opportunity to play a sport, that's not what is being looked at. So we're not being notified of what actually are the possibilities and what is being looked at, but it's not sports teams. There will not be tryouts and practices and games.
That's correct. Yeah, it would be our coaches and other people kind of working with the kids here, but yes, it would not be a conference sporting event.
And it wouldn't be just a bus. Wouldn't it involve buses?
Yeah, we've said it may involve buses depending on when the activities were and what they were.
Okay, Dr. Thorns, if I understand you correctly, there are tentative plans in place, but you couldn't make any decisions on what those plans actually are going to be until you got the notice from the state today. And now you can move ahead and make more definitive plans. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on 3.11? Okay, for 3.12, COVID paid administrative leave. I've talked over the last couple of board meetings about working with CREA and CRES on MOUs for that time. With the specific guidelines. I think we've talked about it quite a bit. Tonight we'll be presenting one from CRES, still working with CREA, but with CRES we will be presenting that to be voted on by the board, and it should be in your packet today. And then the only other thing in your packet that I know Lori included in there were the service awards for our honorees for this year. And I know we sent out that unfortunately Gaelic Park had to be canceled again. And that's 2 years in a row. Will be my third year of being a superintendent before I get to go to one. So I am going to really look forward to it. But that's the list in there of all of our service awards. This time I'm going to pass it over to Kathy Picciolini for her Chief School Business Report.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Really just a couple of updates on the agenda from me this evening. The first one is with spring break right around the corner, we will have a few construction projects starting and getting underway. The final door closers will be installed on the doors that are still required. We'll actually have Knickerbocker Roofing coming to Ridge Central and Finley to start some prep work and to do some patching on the roof. And of course, then the remainder of that project will commence again when school closes. In then addition, some of the lighting is going to be installed over spring break at all 3 buildings. And again, that will be finished then after school is over for the year. So that's what's going on in terms of construction. And so this, hard to believe, it's been exactly a year where we sat in a board meeting and discussed our disposition of old and obsolete equipment. Then COVID hit and it just really got put to the side. So I'm kind of really excited about this one because we've talked a lot about it. And so this, what we had decided to do is put some equipment up for sale to either district personnel or community. What we had decided, since this is a brand new process for all of us and it's bound to have some kinks and bumps in the road, we decided to target Chromebooks. So we went in the basement and identified about 100 Chromebooks that were taken out of service but are still operable. Out of those 100 Chromebooks, there was 56 of them that we decided we're going to offer to district personnel for the sale of $25. And the reason we did not do all of them, we have HPs and Dells that are actually more valuable for the district in terms of using their parts. If our technology department has to replace a screen, it's easier just to go to one of these other machines and take the parts. So that's why we're only looking right now about at 56 machines. And so pending board approval, the next step would be an email going out to district personnel offering the sale of these Chromebooks. We already guarantee that they are working, they've been power washed, but that's really as far as it goes. They're as is. Our employees will be asked to sign a liability waiver, and the memo that needs to go out needs to be very specific, because we never want to sell something even at this, price of $25 that does not meet the purchaser's expectations. So I'm going to work with the technology department to get that verbiage correct, because these are older machines. You're not going to be able to run the latest apps, or they might not be as quick. So we want to get that out to district personnel and be very, very transparent on what they're purchasing. And then hopefully, if this goes well, we do have other items. We have laptops, we have printers, and eventually we would like to move forward and dispose of that equipment as well. So does anyone have any questions on that or on the process? Okay. Okay, so then the last thing is just a little bit of housekeeping. Every year, per board policy, contracts over $10,000 need to be board approved. And historically, we do that at the beginning of the year. But what I included in your board packet today is a list of vendors that throughout the year have gone over $10,000. So we just wanted to make sure we get those board approved. And if anybody does, if no one has any questions, that's all I have this evening.
Okay, 5.1 is off the table for now. So we're going to go to 5.2, potential board action to approve MOU for COVID-19 paid administrative leave for the Crest Union. Do I have a motion? Second? Need a second.
What are we voting on?
Oh, 5.2, Greg. the CRESS MOU.
I'll second.
Tiffany on the second.
Ready?
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle. Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport. Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. We don't have anything for other? Okay, new business, potential board action to improve, pardon me? Right, I was gonna say, calendar A for the 21-22 school year.
Make a motion to approve calendar A.
I second it.
Mr. Hillman on the second.
Greg did the
Mrs.
second.
Greg did the second. Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle. Ms. Davenport. Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action, designate a person to prepare the 21-22 budget. Okay, you. So we're gonna designate Dr. Thorns.
I'll make the motion.
Need a motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. 6.3, potential board action to approve contract for Our Lady of the Ridge for temporary furniture storage.
I'll make the motion.
Greg motion.
Motion.
A second.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
No.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mrs. Callan.
No.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Potential board action to approve contract with an outside vendor for, is it, speech pathologist? 0.6, sorry. Speech pathologist for the remainder of the school year. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
A second. Thank you. Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Okay.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. Dr. Thorns is going to take this one.
6.5, potential board action to approve tuition fees for the superintendent's participation in the Illinois School for Advanced Leadership Program. I did have a chance to apply for this program before winter break and found out about 2 weeks ago that I was accepted into it. And it's an 8-week program, or I'm sorry, an 8-session program over the next 18 months. And most of the time we go down to Springfield for Fridays and Saturdays, along with about 19 other superintendents in the state to really work on some of the professional development areas and that are included in here. It's vision, coherence, change, capacity, and culture. And I just wanted to thank the board for the support in this area. I know many superintendents who've gone through this and said it's been life-changing in their approach to this job. And especially being in my second year, I'm really excited to continue to build towards that. So just wanted to, again, thank you for your support. And the first weekend that takes place is after spring break, which is April 9th.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Petropoulos.
Aye.
Mrs. Callan.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Salzer.
6.6, potential board action to approve additional benefits and $10,000. Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Next second.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Hellman.
Aye.
Mrs. Callen.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Metropolis.
Aye.
That was an aye for Mrs. Metropolis. Mrs. Egan
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. 6.7, potential board action to approve sale of Chromebooks amount of $200 to personnel. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Ms. Davenport. Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Callen.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropolis.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Potential board action, 6.8, to approve Robin Schwartz as an authorized law firm. Motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
it.
And Mrs. Egan on the second. Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Callen.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Petropolis.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
Aye. I do want to make a comment, though, that there's some of us that have worked with the other law firm for quite some time. And I personally was quite satisfied with it, but I will approve this. $6.9, ready? Potential board action to approve Priya Bocek as an authorized law firm, and my opinion holds on this too, so.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hillman.
No.
Mrs. Petropolis.
Aye.
Mrs. Callen.
Abstain.
Was that, I'm sorry, was that yes? Abstain, thank you. Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
And Mrs. Salzer.
I'm gonna say no.
Does pass.
Okay, other, we have anything special? Meeting reports? Nope. Visitors to speak, opportunity, anybody? We're good there? Okay. President's prerogative, I guess. I know there's a lot of, and this is probably more for the streaming than anything. There's a lot of parents out there that, a number, I shouldn't say a lot, there's a number of parents that really wanted to see us go full-time and just make it happen. Well, what we want and what we can do sometimes isn't always the same. You've heard me speak before that I've wanted to get kids back at school as soon as possible. If we were able to do it in a way that's good for all kids, we would be doing it. But I've talked to Dr. Thorns on a number of occasions, and he has spoken with the administrative staff. And what we're doing now is what we feel is the best thing for our kids. So hopefully, and even if we did do it full time, we're only talking a very short period of time. And I know some of you would like to see it happen, even if it's just for 2 weeks. But we have to do what's right for our kids, and switching teachers around would be, at this point, would be a bit much, with some of them have had multiple teachers already. My hope is, of course, that with everybody getting the vaccines, and I've already had mine, so I'm good, as a number of our teachers and staff here, in the fall, that we can just pick up where we left off over a year ago and just go like investors and hopefully be as normal as possible. Don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. So we'll have to wait and see. Thank you. Okay.
11.0, adjourn to closed session for the purpose of the discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to specific employee of the public body that is subject to the local government wage increase transparency act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act is defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. Discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as described in Section 2C. Imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the district is defined in Section 2C11. The discussion of minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act is defined in Section 2C21 for the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes. No student discipline or security measures will be discussed at this time.
Okay, and it's 7:46.
Need a motion.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Cronquist,
Was that to me? Aye.
yes. Yes. Mrs. Egan,
Aye.
Mrs. Talent,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Hi.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
Give us a few minutes to move into the other room.